Hello. Looking good. Okay, this is not the type of content I do usually. I actually rarely show my face. This is probably the second time I show my face on this channel. And I just wanted to challenge myself and see if I can do it, because I'm a bit of a shy person and this is difficult for me and a bit awkward to talk in front of the camera. So thank you for joining in this journey, and we'll see what we can do. So my name is Tao, and I've been doing photography and video for the past 12 years or so, mostly nomadic, but we will talk about this in other video probably. So what I wanted to talk about today is a product that I received actually last night, because in a couple of days I will be going in Indonesia for 5 weeks, and I wanted to film and I want to take my stuff with me. But the thing that I'm usually taking with me is always this camera that is filming right now. This is the Sony A7IV and a gimbal, because that's kind of my specialty. That's my style, at least. I'm filming everything with the gimbal. So I'm using this, obviously the camera goes on top, but I'm using this 8, sometimes 10 hours in a day. And this is pretty heavy and pretty bulky. All together with the tripod, the wrist rest, and the back handle, and the camera, depending the lens I put on it, I would say it's in between 4 and 6 kilos, which is pretty heavy to carry, especially when you travel. And also pretty big. It's actually, you see, it's like, with the camera on top, it's my chest. So I started to look for smaller gimbal, and then I got trapped in the hype and ended up spontaneously getting this one. This is a smartphone gimbal, a mobile gimbal, and this is from a brand called Hohem or Hohem. It's a Chinese brand, so I probably say it wrong. The model is the iSteady M7, and since I recently switched to iPhone, just because the iPhone 15 Pro can film in log, and I was thinking, if I want to travel really light, maybe that's the way to go. And in fact, without the camera on it, this is probably already half weight. That's the product I would like to talk about today, because when I started to use it, straight away, I noticed that there is little quirks and little things that could be improved. And if you are a bit like me, before buying anything new, anything tech, I always watch 20, 30, 50 videos about it. And I've seen that no one was talking about those things. It came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But first of all, I have to say that I bought it with my own money. I know everybody say this, but I really bought it with my own money because I'm not a reviewer. So I have no affiliation with Hohem whatsoever, and actually I don't think they would be pleased about this video. I think this is a really good product. I just think that I'm probably not the right person for it as a professional videographer, which I assumed already, because mobile videography is quite different than professional videography. Nowadays it's starting to collide a bit, but there is still a gap. That's probably the reason why I might return it in the end. It's mostly because I don't want to rely on my phone for the videography of this trip. It's a bit too precious and too important to me to actually hand it to a small device like this. Anyway, the concept of this video, since there is no sponsorship, there is no bias, I'm actually not even going to talk about the specs, because this product is at the moment really hyped. I leave this to YouTubers that are much more professional and that knows what they are doing. I will just talk about some detail that for me could be improved. Once again, it's really not a bad product. It's just that when I was searching about it, I couldn't find the information. So I decided to make it myself and to talk about it. And keep in mind that I think it's a good product. I'm just not the right person for it, which is okay. The first thing is that when you install the phone for the first time or any time, I at least have the tendency to slide it from the bottom and then to pull up. The problem with this is that the AI camera can come off pretty easily. Even with the button, I heard the model before, the M6 didn't have the buttons to release the camera, but even with this, it really go off easily. And in fact, the AI camera fell down a couple of times because of this already. So you have to be really careful. What I try to remember is to actually slide the phone from the top first, top to bottom. And this is maybe a bit safer. But what is a bit more worrisome for me is that depending of the angle, for example, if you are like this, when the motor is on the back and you want to go upside down, you see the clearance in between the motor and the AI camera is actually maybe 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters. This is now with the iPhone 15 Pro, which is a smaller phone. If you would have the Pro Max, I expect this to be wider and therefore to have even less clearance. Because this is one of the points advertised of this gimbal, is that it can handle more weight, so meaning bigger phone. And I'm not sure that it's not gonna be a problem. But that's something I cannot prove. What is more worrisome, it's maybe when you switch it to portrait, you actually have to take off the phone and you flip the clamp to the side to put the phone again. Again, I have to grab the right bracket. So what is strange is that now there is two things to think about when you balance it. This one, that is basically the clamp spring, where it's centered compared to the clamp, and this lever on the arm. So now, did you see what just happened? This is the thing that really concerns me, is that when the gimbal is not on, the phone is obviously top heavy when you use a ND filter. So as long as it's straight, there is no problem. But it can quickly hit the motor because here there is no clearance at all. Luckily, I think they thought about it because this lever is made of rubber. This lever there is made of rubber. When the phone hits, it shouldn't be so bad and it shouldn't damage your screen, but it's still not a nice feeling for me. And on the back too, on the bottom, it can hit the motor, and here there is no rubber. So my phone is exactly the size, so here it's hitting pretty much the camera, the facing camera, and here it's hitting just the phone case, which is fine. But if you use an iPhone Pro Max, once again, I'm not too sure this is not really dangerous for your phone. Anytime you will put the gimbal in standby, you have to lock the access because this is really dangerous otherwise. Anyway, the motors are strong enough so they compensate this weight problem. But that means that some movement can actually push the phone, and same here. So I'm a bit disappointed, to be honest, because I thought that actually a gimbal designed for mobile phone would take this into consideration and add maybe a bit of clearance that direction. This is probably more important than having clearance here in case of a phone. But I don't know, once again, it's my first time having a mobile phone gimbal, so what do I know? But it's just a first impression, I'm just sharing with you. So let's put it back in horizontal mode because I'm feeling more safe with it. All right, but that means that you cannot see your setting anymore. And what I like to do when I'm filming, usually on my big gimbal, on the RS3, I keep the balance information active when I'm shooting. Maybe it's not necessary for a phone, but I like to have this on my Sony, so I'm sure that it's all the time stable and I can check. If I have a vibration, I can see in live on the screen which motor it is. And then I know that I have to quickly rebalance, because that might happen in festival when you get bumped around and stuff like this. But another thing that is pretty interesting, when the gimbal, so now the gimbal is working. So you can press twice the starting button and that turns it into sleep mode. So now the motors are free, but when the gimbal is in standby, usually what I do, I put it in standby for in between videos that I'm recording, in between clips. And so maybe I would carry it somewhere or having a walk or something. I would lock the axis most probably. But anyway, I'm carrying it and accidentally press and bump the button. And look what happened. The LED light turn on even when the gimbal is in standby. I don't see a use for this. I would honestly have it not react because the gimbal is in standby. I don't want any function, even the screen, the screen not being able to lock it, being too sensitive. That means that in standby mode, I'm changing all my settings without knowing. And then when I take the gimbal again, oh, it's too fast or too slow, or it's not the mode I expected. This is for me a strange thing. Usually on pretty much every gimbal I ever used, it's kind of this function button or the menu button. If you hold and press, it should lock the joystick and the screen. But also something that is pretty curious, my settings have the tendency to reset by themselves. I don't know if it's when I connect it to the app on the mobile or if it's something else, but especially the speed of the gimbal, the follow speed, is always resetting to medium when I want it slow. I want the things to stay slow and smooth and cinematic, and it always default back to, I think, every time I restart it, or at least every time I connect it to the app. So that's definitely something to change for me, because when I know my settings, then I learn to feel my gimbal and it become part of myself. So if I cannot predict its movement, it's really difficult for me to get the shots correctly. So that's probably something to fix in a firmware update. But that brings to the next point. When I connected the Hohem Joy app, I noticed that there is actually no button to check for update. You can see the version, and I suppose that it will pop up something if there is a new update coming. But you cannot check by yourself and no prompt telling you, okay, your gimbal is already up to date. That would be something for me to fix. Because usually when I get new piece of gear, new equipment, the first thing I do is connect it to the app or check the website and see if it's up to date. And I was curious with this one when I received it that there was no update. I think it's version 7 something, but don't quote me on this. Then another point I want to bring is that the gimbal comes with this cable, which is a USB-C to USB-C cable to plug the phone to the gimbal. So what you have to do, you have to leave a bit of space. You slide to have a bit of space. You plug your phone. You bring it back on the rubber, which means that you have to rebalance. And in this case, it started to charge straight away. But for some reason, the cable seemed to be directional, because when I plug, there's two plugs on it. There's two plugs on it, a gray and a black one. When I plug the black one to the gimbal and the gray one to the phone, nothing happens. So if I unplug and I plug it reverse, so the gray one to the gimbal and the black one to the phone, now it works and it's charging. So strangely, the USB cable that they provide is actually directional, and it's not written anywhere, and there is no logo or indication to tell you to. But yes, you have to know that it's only one way. So the gray one has to be on the gimbal and the black one has to be on the phone. Why? I have no idea. But that's the way it works, at least for me. So yes, that's a lot of curious points. So yes, that's quite few curious points. Also, while we are talking about charging, I'm gonna get a power bank. Let's turn off the gimbal. When you plug it, the screen here is pretty bright. It's actually really, really bright. I will turn off the light for a second to show you. But yesterday it was charging in the office and it just illuminated the whole office. So if you plug it in a room or in a dormitory or something, this is super, super bright, and it's gonna wake up everybody and bother everybody for the whole night. There is a workaround though. One workaround that I found is that if you take off the remote, it turns off. And then there is just this tiny LED that indicates that it's charging, which is much better already. So that's already the second tips, the second workaround that require to take the screen off and the remote off. The problem I have with this is that I might lose it. Imagine if you lose this remote, the gimbal is pretty much done. You have nothing to do with it. In my opinion, this screen should be showing the battery level for maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute if you want to, and then dim or totally disable. We have a button on the side that when you press, reactivate the reverse charging to the phone. which by the way, on iPhone, apparently you don't have to press because as long as it's plugged, it's charging the phone, which really sucks the battery. So you don't actually want to have the cable plugged the whole time. But then I really think that this screen should turn off after 1 minute, because when you plug it, you see that it's charging, let it charge. Especially that the charge time takes 3 hours. I think 3 hours is really long time for a gimbal to charge. I honestly don't know the charging time for the DJI RS3, but I would say under 2 hours. I don't know, but it feels 3 hours, at least on paper. Once again, I never used it in the field. I don't know how it would bother me, but since the battery is not replaceable, 3 hours sound excessive to me. I have the feeling it's pretty long. The good point is that you can use the gimbal for a really long time with this battery. If I'm not mistaken, it's 12 hours of use. And right now, because you remember I plugged the cable and so I had to move the phone. So to keep it balanced, I extended the arm. And you can see the camera, you can see the first point I was talking about. The camera is now touching. It's also not super well balanced, but the AI camera is now touching. And that comes to another point, is that when you want to balance the phone and compensate for an accessory that you plug, because of the offset of the balance, so the more you pull out and the more you have to move this arm toward that direction, right? To compensate that the center of gravity of the phone moved. There is actually a good side to it, but the problem with this is that when you want to compensate a lot for an accessory that is really big, for example, if you want to put the Lexa SSD on the bottom of the phone, what will happen is that you can actually extend the arm so much that you cannot fold it anymore. Now, you see, it's not folding, so you cannot lock it actually. So this is also something to know. And in this case, I'm not sure it's actually a downside. I think it's pretty positive that you have the option to extend the arm and compensate for more accessories. And the downside of this is once again the clearance, that you actually cannot fold it anymore and cannot lock it anymore, except if you unbalance your gimbal. So there is a price to use this SSD. And the people who know this SSD, they would probably ask, why don't you put it where it's supposed to go? Because this SSD comes with this little adapter. It's like a U-shaped USB male and female, and you can just plug them, and you are supposed to put it on the back of your phone like so. The problem with this is that on the gimbal here, it's really hard to see, but there is a little rubber that you are supposed to put your phone against. And because of this, you see that there is a problem. There is actually no way to perfectly clamp the phone on it because the connector is resting on the rubber. You can try to move it a bit, but then you get against the clamp itself. So there is no way to put it, at least in the back. So what I logically try to do after this is to reverse it and put it in the front. This covers the record button. So that's a lot of little detail, and maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit. And also because I'm coming from the professional world, so for me, maybe I'm asking too much from this gimbal. And the last point I would like to talk about very quickly, it's since I have also the hub that goes with this Lexa SSD, I was thinking about where I can put it on the gimbal. And they advertise this screw on the top of the gimbal. This screw here is supposed to be for accessories. But I think it's an odd location. Or maybe they just put it for counterweights. But if it was counterweights, I would have put it in the bottom, since the phone would be top heavy. In most cases, especially in vertical, but also horizontal, it would still be top heavy because the filter and the cameras are usually on that side. So I would have put it maybe on the bottom here. It would have made more sense. Like this, it would be easier to actually flatten it like this and balance it like this. But the problem with this screw is that it's too close to the motor to actually put most of the accessories. I tried with a cold shoe and it doesn't fit. And anyway, whatever you would put there on top would totally throw away the balance, and it would be very hard for the motor. They would be working really hard and probably get damaged on a long-term usage if you use it with a big weight, even if those SSDs are really light. This is few grams, but the more you extend the weight outside, and the more it's got leverage, and the more it's important for the balance. So I tried different placements, and I managed with a long screw. I managed to put a cold shoe that was a bit resting on the motor, and then I hang the SSD on the side, Frankenstein the hell out of it, and I couldn't get it to properly work. But then I was also thinking that that's a bit stupid to actually put this extra weight on the gimbal and try to counterweight it and balance it, when in reality there is another screw here. So better putting the SSD and just having cable going up. But this is also not ideal, because if I put a cold shoe here, it's actually covering the stop button, especially depending on what you put in the cold shoe. Like the Rode wireless mic, they are covering the button. The receiver is covering the button. So it's not ideal. But there is ways. I think the best thing you can do for the SSD is just to have a SSD bracket. I'm actually ordering one because of this. And to have a SSD bracket that come here with a 1/4 screw, and here you can have your SSD with 2 cables going up, and this should work perfectly for all usage. So as you can see, there are a lot of little detail, and maybe I'm too nitpicking. It's also my first smartphone gimbal, and I come from the video world, professional video world, so for me, maybe I'm just asking too much from this type of product. I just would like my iPhone somehow to work the same way my Sony does. Maybe we are not there yet, which is kind of reassuring, to be honest. But yes, so once again, I insist, this is definitely not a bad product. I think it's a really good gimbal. It's pretty strong. It seems pretty efficient. I cannot talk in detail because, as I said, I didn't actually actively use it in the field. I cannot talk about reliability either. Oh, one detail I forgot. And this is for me really weird, and this could be just a firmware update, but when you are in PTF mode, so pan, tilt, follow, it follows the pan and the tilt, but strangely, when you double press the trigger, that means that you want to recenter the camera, right? On every gimbal, pretty much it's like this. So let's say I'm pointing up, takes forever because I have a really slow, yes. I'm pointing up and I want to recenter, double press, perfect. The thing that is strange to me is that if your gimbal is inclinated and you double press, nothing happens. Or does it? Actually, what is happening is that the recenter function is recentering compared to the position of the gimbal. So if I point straight, this is so weird for me. If I point straight, you know, because I'm walking, and if you move like this and you double press to recenter, the phone is pointing down. It's not recentering on the horizon level, it's recentering depending on the position of the gimbal. And this is really annoying because that means that when you hold it straight, you should be perfectly straight to actually get the horizon level. You have to make sure that your arms are perfectly straight, and you can never know. So actually in PTF mode, you never know if your horizon is level. In pan follow mode, which is only following this one and not the tilt, it works differently and you would level to the horizon, which makes sense because there is no tilt involved in this mode. You can still tilt by the joystick. So now it's pointing down And if I press twice, okay, it goes straight, even though I was inclinating. But when I'm in pan follow, I want also the center to be the horizon, and that's not the case. So I don't know what's going on there. To be honest, I didn't know Hohem before this gimbal. So I guess they are pretty new on the market. Probably that's little tweaks that they will fix in firmware update later. But this is important. This is important. This is detailed, but this is important. Because in everyday use, not being able to recenter the horizon, having the light turning on and off when you walk around, having the shutter button not working on the main filming app, this is kind of key points for me, and that's the reason why I might actually get rid of this gimbal. Once again, this is really not a bad product. I think I'm just not the right person for it. I'm not the target for this kind of product. Coming from the video world and being professional at what I do, there is a lot of compromise for me, which is also normal when you are going from professional camera to a mobile phone. There is obviously compromise. But I think so many things could be fixed just in the firmware. And yeah, I think it was important to talk about. And hopefully this get to Hohem and they can improve their gimbal for either the next iteration or even this one in the next firmware update. So yes, that's all I had to say. That's actually a lot I had to say. Thank you for watching this video until now. It's been really fun recording, and yeah, now I will get to the edit and try to share this with you as soon as possible. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining, and let me know in the comment if you want more of this type of content, this type of video. I could talk about all the gears that I own and tell you a bit more detail about how it works and how all the little quirks and functions and things that we can improve, or having little tutorial. Let me know in comment what kind of content you would be interested to see. Like this I can get ideas and see what resonates for me. So thanks a lot. Have a great time. Bye bye.